Did you know your credit card points and miles can lose value to inflation? Credit card companies often reduce the redemption value of your points and miles. Now, imagine a credit card with rewards that can grow in value. With the Gemini credit card, you can earn Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos instantly with no annual fee. Every swipe at the store or gas pump earns you instant rewards deposited straight to your account. Plus, sign up now for a $200 Bitcoin bonus to kickstart your rewards. Visit Gemini.com/card today. Check out the link in the description for more information on rates and fees. Again, if you're looking to invest in Bitcoin but don't know where to start, the Gemini credit card makes it easy.
Corporate megastores are spending millions lobbying D.C. politicians on one-sided policies that send small businesses tumbling. They want to enact harmful credit card mandates that take resources away from your local credit union and community bank, leaving Main Street businesses with less access to credit, making it harder for your family to pay for everyday goods like gas and groceries. Tell Congress to guard your card and oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card mandates.
Paid for by Electronic Payments Coalition.
A warmer for the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you as we're going to be joined in a few minutes by Paul Fritschner. He does an incredible job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. He's out there in the Cincinnati area. He does a show/podcast called the Rebound Rundown. I know he does some great work with the Big East Digital Network. We've seen him a little bit with the Field of 68. I know that he is very involved with just everything in general in the Cincinnati area over at 1831 Media as well, and we're going to be chatting with him about what to expect from both Cincinnati and Xavier this year, the two teams out there in his neck of the woods, but additionally, what he takes away from these exhibition results, as we did this podcast just before Xavier and Murray State had a very exciting scrimmage. That was one that came down to the end. I know that we've had a few guests on this podcast who make a lot of them. There are some that make very little out of them. Paul feels like is a little bit more on the side of these newer teams and the teams with a new coach. They can maybe have some more takeaways than these tried and true teams, so we're going to be discussing that. We're also going to be discussing just a little bit of the landscape of the Big East with Xavier taking on Murray State. We're going to talk a little bit about the Missouri Valley Conference and how rock solid that conference might be as well. So we've got a lot to talk about with Paul, including how big of a year this is for Cincinnati with them losing Jizzle James. They're also going to be without Jalen Hayes as well. So we've got a lot to discuss with Paul. It's going to be a fun chat with him. And if you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, large CM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything it is powered by Edge Boost. Edge Boost is making sure that bettors are able to have access to their funds whenever and wherever that 100% of gambling transactions do get approved, and with Edge Boost they actually give you cashback rewards as you utilize them as well. And when you go to edgeboost.bet, make sure you put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That's going to get you a dollar for dollar match on your first deposit up to $25. Now let's have our chat with Paul, who does such an amazing job out there in the Cincinnati area. Xavier Athletics, Cincinnati Athletics, the entire landscape of this sport, you name it, he does it. With Paul, you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at his first and last name, Paul Fritschner, last name spelled Fritschner. And Paul, it is always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, as always, Greg. This means hoops is right around the corner, and that's the best time of the year. Let's talk hoops.
Absolutely, and it has been a very interesting offseason for the main teams out there in your neck of the woods, both Xavier and Cincinnati. And I know that Xavier is your main beat, but how do you look at Cincinnati for this year? Because since we last talked, Jizzle James has pretty much been kicked off the team, and for Cincinnati, that was supposed to be one of their main guards, and I think that puts them in a little bit of hurt with Wes Miller. I think you'd agree with me, in a very big prove-it sort of year.
Well, it's not only Jizzle James, Greg. It's also Jalen Haynes, a transfer in from, I believe, George Mason, coming in to kind of man the middle there, and just recently announced that he's going to be out for an indefinite period of time with a lower body injury, and that is a huge loss for Cincinnati. Now, they do have a freshman coming in the middle. They also have Mustafa Chum, who has some size, but there's not really the exact one-for-one replacement that they're hoping for Jalen Haynes. So if Cincinnati can figure that out. Now, do I think that's going to completely derail the season? No, hopefully one player isn't going to completely change what you were hoping to do this year. But at the same time, I think it does lower just a little bit, lower some of the optimism that there was surrounding Wes Miller's team because he's such a big loss, and I mean literally a big loss inside. And then on top of that, Greg, like you said, you combine that with the loss of his stats didn't always bear it out last year, sure. If you go back and you look at his stat lines, he wasn't Cincinnati's best player last year. But don't get me wrong, losing Jizzle James is another big loss for this team. He was paid like it. They're not going to have him available for this season. So you lose Jizzle, you lose Jalen Haynes, and now all of a sudden you're looking at yourself going, man, that's two starters, two massive pieces to this team that you're going to be without.
Yeah, it certainly is going to be a little bit rough on that front for Cincinnati, and I just fear that in a Big 12 where you've got a lot of top teams, Houston, Arizona, Iowa State, Kansas, you just go down the list. Heck, you saw Baylor, I think is going to be rock solid this year as well. Like, list goes on, that this could be a little bit of a rough year for Cincinnati, and in that shootout that we're going to be seeing between Cincinnati and Xavier, I think that that's going to be such an interesting matchup because for Cincinnati, there's going to be all sorts of expectations. And for Xavier, if they struggle a little bit this year, it's not what Xavier fans want to see. But at the same time, I think that there's going to be a little bit more forgiveness on Richard Pitino with it being year one.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, right? Xavier fans hopefully should understand what Richard Pitino has this year and the fact that if you're hoping for Richard Pitino to be successful in the future, that Xavier's got to get their NIL number up. I mean, plain and simply, Xavier needs more resources to compete at the top of the Big East. And, that's not something that I think Xavier fans are used to. If there is a Xavier fan listening to this that is surprised by that, I think that that's the message that needs to get out to the Xavier faithful here going forward that, yeah, this might be a rough season, but you have to give this coaching staff the resources to compete with the top half of the conference. And I think what could happen this year might reflect that. I'm hopeful for Xavier in the development pieces that they have, where you have guys like Roddy Anderson, who redshirted last year under Sean Miller. You have Jovan Milicevic, who transfers in from New Mexico alongside Filip Borovic, two guys that played with Richard Pitino at New Mexico. They come over here to Xavier. You have Anthony Robinson, who didn't see a ton of time at Virginia. He'll get minutes this year in a big way at Xavier. So you have pieces. All those guys I just mentioned have multiple years of eligibility, but who's the star on this Xavier team? Who gets the ball with 5 seconds left? I don't know if you can really answer that at the high major level right now. We haven't seen them play anybody that's not wearing a Xavier jersey yet. By the time this podcast comes out, you probably already have. I'm not sure when you're putting this out, Greg, but 2:00 on Saturday afternoon is an exhibition against a really talented Murray State team. And I think that, even though it's an exhibition, I think it'll still give you a pretty clear idea of what you can expect from Xavier this year.
And I'm so glad that you transitioned right into what I wanted to talk to you about. It's Paul Fritschner. He does such great work.
Greg, this is not the first time you and I have podcasted together, is it?
No, it is certainly not. It's Paul Fritschner. He does an incredible job doing all sorts of work for Xavier Athletics, the Big East Digital Network. He does some work at Field of 68. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I was just going to ask you, what do we make out of these exhibition results? Because now we're starting to get into exhibition season. We're about 2 weeks away from the opening night of college basketball. And I think that there's a lot of people on social media wanting to get all excited about these results. Heck, it's gotten to the point where they were making up a secret scrimmage result between LaSalle and Rutgers. That never happened. So that's the sort of craziness that we're seeing right now in the offseason. But what do you take out of them? Because I don't necessarily read as much into the final score as much as I do the rotations and some of the individual players themselves.
I do. I think you can take some of both, especially from a team like Xavier and a team like Murray State, where you have so much new. You have 2 new head coaches. They're going to be experimenting a lot. They're going to be using a lot of different rotations. They're going to be doing some funky stuff on the court. They might not be running their best sets. But at the end of the day, I've talked to both coaches leading into this. Both coaches have been very explicit to me that they want to win this game. They know that playing in front of their fans for the first time, it means something to leave with a win. Whether you're Xavier beating a good mid-major team or whether you're Murray State beating a good Big East team, it means something to win this game. So I think if you're a fan of either one of them, or if you're just a neutral trying to figure out how good Murray State or how good Xavier is, I do think you can take away the result of Saturday's exhibition.
And I do think that that's so interesting to take a look at just the dynamics between some of these teams, because an exhibition for Purdue, we know what they're going to be in terms of their starting five. You know that you're going to be getting a lot of Fletcher Lawyer, you're going to be getting a lot of Braden Smith. Would you say that it's maybe a little bit more meaningful for a team like a Xavier, who's in year number one with a new head coach? Heck, Murray State, they've got a first-year head coach as well. So both of these teams are in the same boat versus a team that they've got a lot of veterans, like, well, we'll just spitball another team like a Michigan State. You didn't have a lot of transfers come in there. It's a lot of guys that played with one another last year. Would you say that it's a little bit more meaningful for these teams that do maybe have a lot of, for lack of a better term, new?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think that, again, you're trying to figure out your rotations. You're trying to establish what these teams can be. And in doing so, you have to then go to the drawing board and say to yourself, all right, who can I trust on opening night? Xavier's going to have a secret scrimmage as well the following weekend. But even still through that, Cincinnati has Michigan, as we record this. They also play Arkansas, both on the road. So Xavier and Cincinnati, I think Cincinnati certainly challenged themselves, and I think Xavier has a great opponent in Murray State. So I think you're going to be able to take something away from the new pieces. And again, I'll go back to the point I said in your last question. It's all about the rotations, and both teams are going to want to win the game, and I think it will mean something for the teams that do end up with more points than the other team. I do think that the winner can take something away from it, but you're also looking for, hey, maybe who's outperforming, who had a good preseason, who are we expecting to be a star on this team, and are they a star? Who got rumored to get a lot of money out of the transfer portal? I hate to compare it to money, but it's just the day and age that we're living in. We might not know exact figures, but we might know that so-and-so is a relatively higher paid player than another player. Well, are they playing like it? How does this staff value each player and what they're trying to build going into next season? You start to see all those pieces the first time they go on the floor, and these coaching staffs know that it's the first time their fans are going to see them. Go out there and you try to win the game.
Yep, no question about it. It's the old Herm Edwards line. You play to win the game. It doesn't matter if it's an exhibition or not. These are just human beings that are competitive, and they want to be able to get the job done. As a man that does get the job done, it's Paul Fritschner. He's joining me right here on Cusco Soups, and I am so glad that you did bring up the exhibition between Murray State and Xavier. As we're doing this podcast, this is before it was played. When this podcast is released, you'll know the result of that, but I do want to talk with Paul a little bit about the landscape of the Missouri Valley Conference, how rock solid that might be. We're going to talk about a few mid-majors that Paul is also bullish/bearish on, and we'll do that on the flip side right here on Cusco Soups with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beast and Family Podcast.
Are you interested in effortlessly growing your Bitcoin portfolio? I sure am. The Bitcoin credit card by Gemini earns you Bitcoin back on every purchase. Use it like any credit card. Buy lunch, gas, or your weekly groceries, and you'll earn up to 4% back instantly in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account. All that with no annual fee. And right now, you can grab a $200 Bitcoin welcome bonus. It's the easiest way to start building your Bitcoin stack. Go to Gemini.com/card to learn more. Terms apply. See the link in the description for more information regarding rates and fees.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cusco Soups with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast. Great to be rejoined by Paul Fritschner. He does a tremendous job out there in the Cincinnati area. Taking a look at this wonderful game of college basketball. He's over at 1831 Media. He does a great job with the Rebound Rundown, does some work with the Big East Digital Network. The man is all over the place. He's a 5-tool player when it comes to gauging college basketball. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at his first and last name, Paul Fritschner. Last name spelled Fritschner. And Paul, we left off talking about the exhibition from Saturday that, as we were doing this podcast, had yet to go final. As this is being released, it is going to be a final between Xavier and Murray State. Murray State is one of those teams I'm very intrigued by here in this season in terms of more of the mid-major ranks. As we know, the Missouri Valley Conference has a lot of talented teams, and I do think that that is going to be a good litmus test for Xavier because both of these teams are on relatively equal footing. Murray State, they've got a first-year coach themselves in Ryan Miller, and I really thought that Murray State, out of all the mid-majors in college basketball, had one of the better transfer portal hauls, bringing in someone like a Frederick King, who I felt like deserved many more minutes over at Creighton, bringing in a guy like a J.J. Traynor, who's got a lot of power conference experience. Mason Miller is a guy that I like, and I think Murray State could really surprise out there in the Missouri Valley.
Fred King, right? He played 15 or more minutes 11 times while he was at Creighton. I mean, of course, he's backing up Ryan Kalkbrenner, but he played 15 minutes 11 times, 15 or more minutes, in those stretches where he actually saw long periods of action on the court. He shot 64% from the field. He averaged 10.5 points, a little over 6 rebounds, and almost 3 blocks. He just couldn't get on the court because Ron Kalkbrenner, one of the best defensive players to ever play in the Big East Conference, happened to be in front of him. So I'm going to be super interested to see how Fred King does against Xavier. I think Xavier has some size in the front court. You have Pop Njai, a 7-footer. You have Anthony Robinson, a transfer from Virginia, who's a little under 7 feet, but a lot bigger and stronger than Pop Njai is. He'll be challenged, but Fred King standing at 6'9", 265-ish, can he go out there and dominate in the front court? And then Mason Miller, right? He's coming off an injury, but I mean, he led the Big East in three-point shooting 2 years ago, 45%. He was Tennessee's Mr. Basketball in high school. He's Mike Miller's son. He's Ryan Miller's nephew. I mean, there are storylines everywhere for this Murray State team.
Yeah, there certainly are, and I do think that is going to be a team that has a chance to be able to wow. And I know that you do a little bit of work with regards to some of these mid-majors. I remember last year you were doing that event for the Field of 68 out there in Charleston. And are there a few mid-majors that do stand out to you? Because in your neck of the woods out there in the great state of Ohio, over there by Cincinnati, I know that there's a lot of great mid-major programs out there in like the Missouri Valley Conference, the Horizon League. You're not too far away from the Atlantic 10 as well. Are there a few teams that do pop out? Because Murray State is certainly one of them. I frankly think that the Missouri Valley Conference in general is going to have themselves a really nice year, but are there a few teams that you feel like are maybe a little bit under the radar that could really surprise, especially with like a non-conference upset or two?
I don't know necessarily about the non-conference upset, but one team that I'm keeping an eye on is right up the road in Oxford, Miami, Ohio. I think Travis Steele has it going up there. I think they could finish inside the top 100. I think they'll challenge at the top of the MAC. You get Peter Suter, who was a first-team All-MAC guy, back. You have Evan Ipsaro, who has continued to develop throughout. He's an Energizer bunny in the backcourt at the point. You have a really good freshman class. I think overall, this is a very good Miami team that is playing in a different style than what Travis Steele had at Xavier, and they're going to be able to compete, I think, right at the top of the MAC. I'm really excited to see what Travis Steele has in Oxford this season.
Yep, I'm really excited as well because I'm not sure if you'd agree with this. It just feels like the MAC has been a little bit down in the last few years. I think that the move for UMass going from the Atlantic 10 to the MAC is actually going to serve them very well, and I think that that'll help out the MAC as well because it's really been Akron, Kent State, and then it's been a whole lot of meh with the directional Michigan schools not doing a lot. Northern Illinois has been rough, and I feel like this could be a big coming out party both for Miami of Ohio and really for the MAC in general to reestablish a little bit of prominence because I do think that both Kent State and Akron, who have really run the conference over the last few years, they're going to be rock solid too.
They are. They absolutely are. And I think it'll be exciting to see if the MAC can take a step forward because, you look at Charleston down out of the CAA. I think the CAA and the MAC are fairly comparable conferences. You've seen a lot of the predictive metrics. They've been right there neck and neck with each other. I think you look at the top of the MAC and you look at the top of the CAA, Towson, Charleston, UNC Wilmington, some of those types of teams right alongside the top of the MAC in those mid-major conferences. You're looking for both of those conferences, I think. Can somebody break out and take a step forward this season?
Yep, absolutely. And I feel like another conference that you cover, they're going to be looking a little bit at that as well. And that would be the Big East, because right now the two main favorites out there, without question, it's UConn along with St. John's. I personally give the edge to UConn because of the point guard play, but I do look at that Big East, and I think that it's going to be interesting to see how those teams towards the middle/bottom middle might be able to perform, because we just fleshed out Xavier, a team that you cover very well. Butler, I think, is in a big year under year number 3 for Thad Matta. Probably Providence, I think, is going to be rock solid as well. And then when it comes to DePaul, can they be able to build off of what they did last season after they have been the dregs of the Big East for a very, very long time? But it feels like Chris Holtmann finally has some upward momentum for that program.
Yeah, I agree. I do too. I think so as well. I think Butler actually is a spot on team to talk about because I think it's underrated what Butler has done this year in the offseason. And I think they maybe have some resources that have gone under the radar and haven't been talked about as much as some other programs around, the Big East or high majors. And maybe it's time for Thad Matta, who's in the twilight of his career. Is he finally going to make a run here with Butler and get Butler back to prominence? It's been so long, 2018, since they've made the NCAA tournament. I don't know if I'm ready to call my shot and say they're a tournament team this year, but if we're looking up here, Greg, on the night of Selection Sunday and Butler's heard their name called, I'm not going to call you crazy to say that right now.
Yeah, I'm not either, and I do think that with this Butler unit, they did a nice job bringing in Michael Ajayi. I love what he's able to bring to the table, and then I think that Finley Bizjack might be one of the more underrated guards in all of college basketball after he really had a nice coming out party towards the second half of the season last year, too.
Yeah, I do, too. I think he's a nice piece, I think, all over the map on Butler. I'm just impressed with this team, how they built it, and then, obviously now it's a question of can they turn it into wins, but yes, I think they're right there for it.
Absolutely. And then I do want to wrap it up with this because we have been talking about a lot of teams that we're bullish on, teams that we're feeling good about. Is there a team or two out there, though, that you feel like is maybe a little bit overvalued and you look at them and you just don't understand where the love is coming from with them?
I hate to do this around here, but Ohio State, I'm just not sold on Ohio State yet. Maybe that's just a product of what's happened the last couple of years there, but I just want to see Ohio State do it before we talk about them. I know you can't take too much out of what's going on in maybe less than ever, what's happening on Ken Palm in the beginning of the season because there's so much turnover. But, that is one team that stuck out to me at 27. I just want to see it. And I don't necessarily want to say that they don't have the guys, but, I just want to see it from them.
Yep, and I'm with you there with Ohio State. I do want to see a little bit more of the Diebler regime because, he had that nice end when he was the interim coach. Last year, they fell a little bit short of expectations. And heck, going back to the Chris Holtmann era, they were falling short of expectations as well. So I'm right there with you on that. And Paul, you're a man that you never fall short of expectations. You always exceed them because you're doing an amazing job taking a look at this great game of college basketball. If it's anything related to Xavier, I know that you're doing a great job covering that, the Big East Digital Network, and so much more. I know that starting in the next few weeks, you're going to be a very, very busy man. So love to get people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. So over the course of my career, like you've mentioned, Greg, I've pretty primarily focused on Xavier, but this year I'm going to be really focusing not just on Xavier, but more so on the teams around this area. So Xavier alongside the teams like Cincinnati, Louisville, Kentucky, the teams that I've covered the last few years on the Rebound Rundown, which is the podcast that I do every day during the college basketball season. It'll be front half Cincinnati area, back half national, and it's a 10-minute show you can get every morning, the Rebound Rundown. I'm really excited for it, expanding my horizons with some of the coverage that I do, and hopefully people will enjoy that. So whether it's Xavier or whether it's something around here in the Midwest, hope to be able to bring all that coverage to you here throughout the season.
And Paul, he is going to do a great job of being able to deliver that coverage because he does such amazing work taking a look at this great game of college basketball, covering everything out there in the Cincinnati area, and so much more. So a big thanks to Paul for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I am with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. We are up over 2,150 straight days without a missed podcast, so we've got you guys all covered there. And I've already done a conference preview podcast for all 31 conferences, wherever you're getting this podcast. If you look down just the show list, the list of podcasts, they are all there for you guys. We are 2 weeks away from the start of the season. Then once we get the games back, picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. So I appreciate you tuning in today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
Corporate megastores are spending millions lobbying DC politicians on one-sided policies that send small businesses tumbling. They want to enact harmful credit card mandates that take resources away from your local credit union and community bank, leaving Main Street businesses with less access to credit, making it harder for your family to pay for everyday goods like gas and groceries. Tell Congress to guard your card and oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card mandates.
Paid for by Electronic Payments Coalition.